we're talking about foot and toe strength, and I might be a little bit of a broken record, especially with this first slide, that your foot and ankle have to absorb 2 to 5 times your body weight when running. So your feet are the only thing that should come into contact with the ground as you're running. So it's really important that they're super strong. We'll go over to prevent injuries, for performance. It has to, your feet have to dissipate all those forces. So if they're not strong, they're either going to be collapsing, you're going to end up getting pain in whether that's muscular pain, tendon pain, bone pain. And it can also work all the way up. So if your foot's collapsing in, you can get your knee collapsing in, it can put pressure on your hips and your IT band. So really important, and I think very overlooked for runners not to do their foot and ankle strength, specifically their foot strength is what we're going to kind of talk about more today. Because you really don't need any dumbbells or any heavy weight for it. So we'll go over ways you can strengthen it without putting little dumbbells on the end of our feet, because that's a little impossible. All right, so here again, just the importance of the foot and ankle strength. It's really critical that all those muscles are providing stability, balance, propulsion. We don't want to be wasting energy having to balance and stabilize as soon as our foot hits the ground. As soon as our foot hits the ground, we want to use all that energy to move forward. Why it matters and why we're going to talk about it today is we're looking to improve stability and balance in the foot specifically, but the toes and feet. Enhance your propulsion and your speed forward so you're not wasting that energy stabilizing. As much injury prevention as we can. I like the term injury resilience a little bit more, because we can't ever fully prevent them in any sport, but especially running, just due to the repetitive nature of it. We're looking at how we can shock absorb and how we can dissipate those forces a little more efficiently, and then just better running form and efficiency. Like I said, if our foot's collapsing in or if there's weakness there, that it could be traveling all the way up to our knees, hips, it could completely change our gait. So the benefit of stability and balance, we'll kind of fly through this and get to the exercises since I've kind of touched on it. But our foot and toe muscles are helping to maintain that stable base to keep everything aligned as we're moving forward. This stability prevents excessive pronation, which is that rolling in, or supination, which is the rolling out, and helping to avoid your hip and knee misalignment. So whether that's that rolling in, your knees kind of coming in, or a little bit more bow-legged. You may hear this like pronation, supination when you're looking for shoes or being fit for shoes. Some of them will say like they help prevent some of that pronation, that rolling in, especially with like a medial post is what they'll call it, but where it's supporting your arch a little bit. And so if you know you tend to roll in a little bit, that could be beneficial in your shoes. But I don't want you to completely rely on it. We want to work on some of these exercises and how can we strengthen our foot so we're not relying on just some more support, like if this is the inside of my foot here, to prevent us from collapsing in, whether that's an insert or the shoe itself. So then how are we looking at enhancing our propulsion and speed forward? So the toes, and especially the big toe, is what plays the most significant role in this push-off phase of running. I joke that, I mean, we don't want to lose any of our toes, but we really don't want to lose the big toe. That's the power toe. That's what you're pushing off with. And that's how you can generate more force. And so if that toe is not doing its job and not pushing into the ground, that can also cause some, misalignments of the foot, hips, and ankles. So runners with strong toes and feet can increase their cadence and improve their running economy. So if you've ever looked at your watch, if you have a Garmin or a Coros or any type of GPS watch, it'll likely give you your cadence. And we want that to be up at like the 180, 190 range, ideally. For many of you guys, I'll call them out, that know Alex Liffer, we were running this weekend, he said his is like 140 to 150, which makes sense because he has these really long strides. It's almost like he's galloping. It's very slow. He struggles to bring it back down. Whereas this weekend, like when my husband Ed raced and we looked at his was 194. So by having those strong toes and feet, you can bring that cadence, you can increase that cadence, which is really where you're going to be the most efficient and run your fastest, especially as the distance get longer. So is that injury prevention or injury resilience that we start to have compensatory movements and motions if we have weakness in our foot, ankle, toes, anything in there. So not only like your plantar fascia and your Achilles or any type of other tendon issues in your foot, because there's so many tendons that go out to your toes, but you're also looking at shin splints. You could be looking up at the knee, whether that's meniscus type injuries, even MCL, LCL, IT band, all that can put excessive pressure on those different structures if our foot and ankle aren't stabilizing at the base properly. So the impact of strengthening all those intrinsic foot muscles, and by intrinsic, I just mean all those tiny little foot muscles, help distribute the force evenly and minimizing impact on some of the vulnerable areas. So those muscles and those intrinsic small muscles of your foot and ankle are not made to withstand a ton of forces. We want to make sure they're strong, and then they can transfer that force to some of the bigger muscles that are made for taking up those forces. You think of like how big your glutes are, how big your quads are, and then you think of how tiny those muscles in your feet are. So then shock absorption. The foot's arch structure is surrounded by muscles so that you have that natural shock absorption. You will get some collapsing of your arch with every step that you run and walk. That's super natural. That's what's supposed to happen. It's not going to be super rigid. We want it to absorb in when they collapse, but it kind of comes down a little bit to absorb those forces. It's when it's coming all the way down or when it's doing it in a not controlled fashion that we get a little more worried. The only way to see that would be to video as you're running, and really without shoes on, because you can't tell with your shoe on what that arch is specifically doing. But I would say if you have a history of like plantar heel pain or a lot of pain in your arch, then I would focus a lot on these and trying to support that arch and all the muscles of your feet. So the impact is a stronger foot structure supports the arch more effectively, which allows for that better shock absorption and lowering the risk of stress fractures, joint pain, and even some of the soft tissue pain that ends up happening in the foot and ankle. So then better running form and efficiency is another big one. Like I said, when those are strong, we're able to maintain proper form and propel ourselves forward, as opposed to wasting energy stabilizing here before we can go forward. So strong feet contribute to a natural midfoot strike. Don't get too caught up in this midfoot strike. There's not really an optimal toe strike, heel strike, midfoot strike. If you look at elite runners, they run in a very wide variety of ways. So whatever running form and foot pattern that your body finds is typically the most efficient one. The caveat is if you have a lot of injuries, then that might be something that you want to look at. Even if you have a lot of hamstring issues, a lot of like pain up at your sit bone where that hamstring attaches, then we might want to look at if you're heel striking and you're overstriding, which those two things typically go together, then you would want to look at that and see if we can't bring your foot more closer under you, and under your hips. And then that'll naturally increase your cadence and take some of that heel strike away. But if you're having no issues, no injuries, no reoccurring injuries, then I wouldn't worry about whether you're a midfoot, toe strike, heel strike, or anything like that. All right, so here's some of the exercises that we're going to go over, and I have videos of all of these so that you guys can see them. The toe yoga gets super fun, and we're just looking to strengthen all of the tiny muscles in our foot and ankle. So this toe curl one, you're going to place a towel under your toes and you're literally just going to scrunch it. So you'll feel this one in your arch a lot. There's kind of mixed research on this now. It used to be that this was a really popular one. It's being phased out. Hi, Mikey. It's being phased out a little bit, but I think still really good for that arch to support it. And so that's that toe curl one as Mikey goes down to nap. So here's the toe spread. So this is one of the first kind of toe yoga ones that we'll do. You don't need any weight for it, but your foot's just flat on the ground. And you're trying to spread those toes as much as you can so that you can see light and see space. So that's working all of those tiny muscles in between your toes and in your foot. I think a lot of people think of like the muscle on the bottom of your foot for your arch. You have the muscle on the top and you have your Achilles. But we have all these tiny muscles that branch off to our feet. And to our toes, not only the top of our toes, the bottom of our toes, and in between our toes that they can move. So this is another really good one. Hold it for a second or two, and then try to relax there. So this is the toe spread one. So toe yoga, this is when it gets to be fun. Your foot's flat on the ground, and you're going to lift just your big toe off the ground, and then bring it back down. So your 4 baby toes are going to stay on the ground the whole time. A lot of people struggle with this one. If you need to use your hand to push down on those 4 toes as you do it, that's fine for the first couple times, just to get that movement down. But then you're going to work on just bringing that big toe up while keeping those other 4 toe down. And again, that's going to really work that muscle and tendon at the top of your big toe there. And this might take a little while for you to get. A lot of people don't get it the first time, so don't get frustrated. Even if your toe's not moving, you might see it twitching. If you're working really hard, you're still starting to work on those muscles and strengthen those muscles, even if you don't see movement right away. So then the next progression of this is you're going to keep your big toe down and you're going to lift your other 4 toes up. So now we're working on not only the muscles under our big toe to keep it down, but the muscles on top of our other 4 toes to lift it up. So kind of the exact opposite of what we were doing. And same thing, if you need to hold down that big toe to keep it down, to have them not all come up together, then that's perfectly fine for the first couple times to try to get that movement pattern down a little bit. So this next one is going to be a little trickier. So it's really, I'll say easy, relative, that you have a muscle that goes to your big toes, and then it's really easy to use your other 4 toes all together collectively. But in this one, you're going to have all your toes on the ground. You're going to lift your big toe up, and then you're going to have all your toes up. You're going to bring your big toe down and then your baby toe down. You're going to leave your middle 3 toes up. Might be kind of hard to see in the video. But again, you're lifting all your toes up. You're bringing your big toe down to the ground, and you're bringing your baby toe down to the ground, and the middle 3 toes are going to stay up. This is the one people struggle with the most. And typically you have one foot that's better than the other foot. So just work on them again, like the last 2. If you need to hold them down the first couple times, you can do that. And with all of these, you really can't do them too much. So even if they're in your shoes and you're sitting throughout the day, you're trying to keep your big toe down and move your other toes. If you're just sitting at home, if you're eating dinner or anything like that, moving your toes around, this will help a lot with that toe strength, even though kind of silly. All right, so this is the toe grab and pull. So this is just a long resistance band that I have, a long flat band. You're going to anchor it under your heel on the ground, and you're going to pull it up over your knee. So hold it pretty taut there. Make sure you're anchoring it with your heel so it doesn't come up and smack you in the face. But what you're going to do is, with your foot flexed up, like you can see, you're going to grab it with your toes. So you're going to curl your toes before you bring your foot down to the ground and then bring it back up. The tendency that most people have is that they're going to grab it with their toes, bring it down, and then release their toes before they come back up. But you want to keep the band, grab it with your toes all the way down, all the way up. You might have some cogwheeling or some jumping as you go up and down. That's super normal. It just means there's some weakness there. So it's really working your arch as you're actively moving your foot up and down. So another really, really good one. If anybody doesn't have a band, let me know. I have a whole roll in the office. I can cut you off some and bring it out to camp. But another really good one just for that foot and ankle strength, especially that arch strength. So then heel walk. I mean, this is one of the ones we use as the dynamic warm up at camp, but just another really good one. It works the whole front of your shins, the front of your toes, the front of your foot, or top of the foot, just to keep it up the whole time. So another great one that you can just incorporate a couple times a week or during strength, just to make sure that everything's activated, everything's strong, and firing correctly. The next one is another one we do in dynamic drills. It's just that toe walk. And I've said this out there on Tuesdays, but really making sure you're driving into the ground with that big toe. Like I said, that's the power toe. That's what's going to help propel you forward the most. So as you do this, really focusing on tiny steps, being as high as you can, and really pushing through that big toe. With this one specifically, because it's working the calf and Achilles also, which are really important for runners, like we've talked about, you can add weights to this. So I just have my hands here, like what we do in our dynamic warm up. But if you wanted to add a dumbbell, a kettlebell in each hand to work this a little more, you absolutely could. And with both this and the heel walk, I would encourage you to do, maybe 2 sets of 20 steps. So you're going a lot further than we do on Tuesdays as part of the dynamic warm up. We're looking at it as more of a strength standpoint here. So then this one, I think we talked about it when we did the injury prevention talk, but this is a single leg calf raise hold with the weight pass. So you're on one foot, you're coming up onto your toe, so you're holding that calf raise, and then you're going to pass a weight back and forth. It doesn't have to be a really heavy weight. It can be 2 pounds, 5 pounds, a full water bottle that you're passing back and forth. It's just forcing you to adapt to that change in weight as you're passing it from one hand to the other. The goal is to keep that heel up the whole time. And again, that's working your calf and Achilles because you're on your toes, but also all those muscles along your arch because again, you're on your toes. So another really great one to incorporate in, especially if you have a history of foot pain, plantar heel pain, and then of course, calf and Achilles pain. So this is a toe extension walk, which is one of my favorites. So it's a very exaggerated forward step and then backward step. So as you're coming forward, you're really accentuating coming up on the big toe, almost like a calf raise before you come through with the other foot. And then you're doing the exact opposite motion. Typically going backwards is going to be a bit harder as you start to load that foot and really control bringing your heel down. The slower you can do this one, the better. And just controlling it. Again, pushing that big toe on the ground, focusing on keeping contact with the ground with all of your toes, and just slowly rocking forward and then slowly walking back. And I would do maybe 10 or 12 of these. I do these a lot of times after I get done running, that I'll do maybe a set of 20 to 25. It doesn't take that long. And just really focusing on strengthening your foot and ankle. With a lot of these, pretty much with all of these, no shoes is going to be better than with shoes, but make sure you're not on like a concrete floor if you're doing this or the single leg calf raise hold with the weight pass, just because it is really hard and you don't want to irritate the bottom of your foot for no real reason. So grass, carpet, a rug, anything like that's going to be a little bit better. All right, so that's all the strength stuff for the foot and ankle. The workouts for this week, we have the spring camp is on Tuesdays, of course, at 6 p.m. We are at the Satellite High track tomorrow. We're going to try some different distances. So we're going to go over this when we get to the track with where you're starting, because there's going to be different stagger points depending on your distance for everybody, except for the group that's in lane 1 to make sure the distances are correct. But I'm going to do 3 to 4 by 600. This is going to be about 5 to 10 seconds faster than your threshold pace. So just a little quicker than threshold with a 200 meter easy in between. 600 is about a lap and a half. It's a lap and a half if you're in lane 1, but it'll be a little different because some of you guys in the outside lanes. And then 200 meters is half the track. Then we're going to do 3 to 4 by 400 meters, which is 1 lap around. And you get 400 meters in between that. They're going to be quicker at that repetition pace. And then we have 3 to 4 by 200 meters, still at that repetition pace. So getting after it with 200 meters in between. Like we've done before on the track, I want you guys to really work on working together as opposed to focusing on a specific pace that you're hitting, trade off who's leading. I didn't program the watches for this one because the track's more accurate and it keeps you guys together a bit more than programming it in. But I've had several people say that they're not going to make it on Tuesday, and I'm happy to program that in. You just have to let me know by this evening, but I can't guarantee tomorrow with my schedule that I'll be able to get it done. It's Long Run Coffee Night. So Long Run Coffee is an electrolyte infused coffee, and they are sending or have sent a bunch of samples. And so we'll have those out there for you tomorrow night. And then our long run is going to be at Oars and Paddles at 6 a.m. this week. And I am hosting a stretching workshop at Oars and Paddles at 8 a.m. right after that. So if you guys want to stay, bring a snack, bring a protein shake, bring your water, Gatorade, whatever you want to have afterwards, bring a towel, and we'll do a little stretching workshop there, probably just behind the pavilion in the grass. Then from Run Like a Girl Camp, you guys are still on Wednesdays. You'll be at 6 p.m. You're at Vera Burrows West, and you have a little bit longer threshold work. So you have 4 by 6 minutes at threshold pace with 3 minutes in between. That is programmed into your watches if you have that GPS device connected to Final Surge. It's Chamois Butter Night, so you guys will get those samples tomorrow night to help with chafing. And then your long run's also at Oars and Paddles. It just starts at 7 a.m. and you are also invited to that stretching workshop at 8 a.m. on Sunday, back there behind the pavilion. All right, do we have any questions related to foot, toe, ankle strength, run camp workouts, anything of this such? All right, well, I'll hang on for about another minute if anybody has questions. Otherwise, thanks for jumping on today, guys, and I'll see most of you guys tomorrow, Tuesday at the Satellite High track.
Thank you.
Thank you.